I play a lot of old games here. It's fun to look into the past and compare old games to their more modern equivalents. They're like two completely different worlds. Well, in 2015, Double Fine Productions bridged these two worlds together by remastering the 1998 cult classic Grim Fandango. Grim Fandango is an adventure game created by LucasArts that takes place in the Land of the Dead. It's a very puzzle-heavy game with point-and-click gameplay focusing around gathering information and items to progress. Let's take a look at the official website's plot synopsis. Something's rotten in the Land of the Dead and you're being played for a sucker. Meet Manny Calavera, travel agent at the Department of Death. He sells luxury packages to souls on their 4-year journey to eternal rest. But there's trouble in paradise. Help Manny untangle himself from a conspiracy that threatens his very salvation. Initially, the game was a complete commercial flop. While nowadays people almost exclusively sing its praises, it was initially credited as contributing to killing the adventure game genre as a whole, that is, until Telltale's The Walking Dead released in 2012. Before I can get into the plot overview, we need to talk about recording this game. Most of the time, recording is a really simple process. You open the recording software, you make sure that all of the sources for Discord, your microphone, and the game are correct, and then you hit record. Well, for some reason, Grim Fandango doesn't allow you to record audio, at least not through OBS. That means that for all the cutscenes that I have to show, the sound effects and voice acting will be done by yours truly, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Let's get into the game. Manny is a travel agent working at the Department of Death, or DoD. He finds the travel package that best fits his client so they can traverse the Land of the Dead, but only if they qualify. His current client doesn't qualify for anything, meaning they have to travel through the Land of the Dead the hard way. Instead of taking something like the number 9, which is a top-of-the-line express that takes you to the Land of Eternal Rest in just 4 minutes, this client will have to spend 4 years making his way there by foot. As Manny sends said client on the way, the man asks if Manny can give him a ride. Unfortunately, Manny isn't allowed to leave until he pays off what he describes as a little debt to the powers that be. Manny takes off his cloak and reveals his stilts, revealing his much shorter stature and a patterned suit. He's grumbling about always getting bottom-of-the-barrel clients and wishing that he could stumble upon a rich dead saint that could actually afford a decent plan. In the corner, a pneumatic tube system makes a loud noise. Manny has just received an invite to a poisoning, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean. Before he heads off to that, let's talk about the controls. This game has exclusively fixed camera angles. This occasionally can be disorienting, but you get used to it fairly quickly. They do make some weird choices with the angles that were more common around the 90s, like placing your character at the very far end of a room where you can barely see them. You move around by clicking on the ground, and you can run by clicking twice. You can technically click whatever item or thing you want to interact with and Manny will head that way, but you can't run while doing that, so it's best to just use the floor. I really love how the inventory looks. Manny stores everything inside of his coat. There's a custom animation for taking out and putting back each item. This does mean that you have to scroll through each thing that you own one by one, which is unfortunate, but it's charming enough that it's worth it in the end for the novelty. The menus are kinda confusing to navigate. When you pause, it takes you to the main menu, and settings like subtitles were labeled very oddly. You have to manually choose between hearing voices, having subtitles on screen, or both. I do really like that the save menu has a feature where this mural is more illuminated the further you get into the story for each chapter. Speaking of which, this game is split into 4 chapters, or 4 years as they like to put it. The mural is segmented for each chapter, which is really convenient for trying to figure out where you are in the plot. Manny leaves his office, taking a pit stop at the secretary's desk to ask about the poisoning. Apparently, to get there, Manny needs to talk to his driver. Upon looking around for him, he's nowhere to be seen. Manny finds a toolbox and starts trying to open it. In adventure games like this, your best bet will always be to grab anything and everything you can if you think there's even a slight chance that you'll find a use for it. When Manny tries to grab something from the toolbox, he angers Glottis, a mechanic working for the DoD. Glottis quickly calms down after realizing that it's just a salesman. The voice acting here is great, but unfortunately you can't really hear it because of the glitches that we had, so you'll just have to take my word for it. They absolutely killed it. Dead joke intended. According to him, Manny's driver was sent home early, meaning he's gonna need a new one. He asks if Glottis is willing to be his driver, but Glottis can't exactly fit into the vehicle without some pretty hefty modifications. He gives Manny a work order to get signed by the boss to allow for said modifications, but when Manny goes upstairs, his boss isn't allowing visitors. Outside of the office building, there appears to be somewhat of a festival going on, but tents block the path in. Manny can interact with a clown and trick him into giving over an assortment of different balloon creations, ranging from a simple cat to Robert Frost. We mainly want some dead worms, which are literally just empty balloons that we can fill up later. To the side of the building, there's a rope made up of an assortment of ties. Manny uses them to climb up dozens of stories onto the balcony of the floor with his office. His boss's window is wide open, and absolutely no one is inside. Manny finds a system hooked up to the intercom that gives a pre-recorded response whenever his secretary buzzes in. With some quick reprogramming, the message now asks the secretary to just sign the document in question for him. One intercom use later, and Manny has the signature he needs for his vehicle modifications. Glottis can now mostly fit into the car, so it's time to head to the poisoning. They go to the real world where Manny can get yet another client. The Land of the Living has a completely different art style than the Land of the Dead. The Land of the Dead is all very cartoony, while in contrast, the living resemble newspaper cutouts pasted together in a scrapbook. It's creepy, but it's also really artistically interesting, so I love seeing it. The art direction in this game overall is just phenomenal. I love it to death. Manny finds his new client. Unsurprisingly, this client can't afford any packages of worth either. After getting yelled at by his boss for blaming his clients for his misfortune, Manny has finally had it. He's gonna steal someone else's client and get himself a premium sale. Now here's the thing about Grim Fandango. Because it's a 90s puzzle game, it falls victim to 90s video game puzzle logic. The next puzzle here is a great example of some of that absurdity. Using the dead worms from earlier, Manny can take some chemicals that when combined will create a foam. He sends them through his pneumatic tube machine to break it, causing a repairman to go and fix it. I played this game in voice chat. We had 5 total people trying to solve this puzzle, and it took us 45 minutes to figure out what to do. What you're supposed to do is walk into the room during the repair and activate this bolt, but we did not see this bolt. In this game, you can do 3 things. You can look at an item, you can take an item, and you can interact with an item. No matter what angle you view this item from, you can always at least look at it. Except for this bolt for some reason. On the other side of the door, we saw that the only thing that you could interact with was the wheel on the door, and we just moved on thinking that there was nothing else. But when you move to the other side, only then can you examine the lock and use it. I understand that you should only be able to turn the lock from that side. That's where the little knob is. But you should still be able to view it and look at it from both sides. Because it's a lock that was drilled into the door, it's visible from every side. How are we supposed to know we can interact with it when the second we walk in the room, you can't interact with it, but when you switch to a different camera angle, now you can? It just doesn't make sense to me. We literally shoved an entire loaf of bread into the pneumatic tube system before realizing that there was a bolt we could hit. That's how desperate we were getting for stuff to try.
Oh my, that bolt there? Is that a bolt? Above it?
Are you kidding me? Hey!
Oh!
Hey! Get out of here, run! I broke him. It's fine. We're just blind.
So small! I literally asked you, is there any way to prop the door open?
I ran my mouse over it looking for anything, and I did not see it appear.
Yeah, like when it was like this, you tried to interact with the lock, but you couldn't.
Come on.
It was like 20 minutes of us just being complete dunces.
Now that the bolt is turned, the door can't close anymore and Manny can get inside. He tries to block one of the messages by inserting a playing card into a slot in the tube, but there's too much air pressure and the card is sucked away into the system. Manny uses a hole punch on the secretary's desk to create ventilation and retrieve the message. I actually solved this puzzle by forgetting that I had the card in my hand, so when I ran into the desk, I accidentally activated the hole punch. Manny grabs the client information and races off with Glottis to get them. Apparently her name is Mercedes. Glottis made some extra modifications to the car, so they bolt down the road, leaving Manny's more successful coworker in the dust. That's actually someone that I completely forgot to mention. Manny's coworker's name is Domino and he gets all the good clients. Domino frequently rubs it in Manny's face, and Manny's boss always compares the two of them. This obviously created a decent amount of tension in the workplace. Manny brings Mercedes back to his office, interviewing her and becoming even more confident that she's his big-ticket client that will get him out of here. But somehow, she's not appearing as being qualified for any packages, just like all of his other clients. She was literally a saint of a human being when she was alive, so this makes no sense. Manny heads out of his office to talk to the secretary, Ava, about what the heck could possibly be going on. He's stopped before he can get there by his boss, who is fuming. Here is my dramatic rendition. You vandalized company property in order to obtain secret information, so you could take your illegally modified company car and your unregistered driver and run Domino here off the road, all in order to steal a client from her legitimate agent. There's nothing legitimate about this place. You give all the good clients to Domino. Manny, now I'm embarrassed for you. You've embarrassed the whole office. I'm going to call the woman in here so you can apologize to her yourself. Ava, send in Miss Colomar, please. She left about 15 minutes ago, sir. She said she had a long walk ahead of her and wanted to get started. Walking? She had a ticket on the number 9. Why did she think she has to walk? That's the best package I could find for her. Now you see why I give all the good clients to Domino. That woman was a saint and a shoo-in for a double-N ticket that she's not going to get because you just couldn't find it. And now because of your little stunt, she's out there. On her own. Walking by herself through the petrified forest facing the demons of the underworld alone and unprotected. This is her reward after a lifetime of hardship and public service. Her destiny stolen by some overreaching salesman looking for a fat commission he didn't deserve. Manny is thrown into the shop where Glottis works, being locked inside and forbidden from leaving until the proper punishment can be prepared. Manny talks to the guard outside in an attempt to get let out, and he learns about his fate in the process. Manny is going to be sprouted. Being sprouted is when you are stung by something called a sprouter, which will cause plant life to consume your body from the inside out. How delightful! Manny demands to be let out because he believes that the DoD is running a crooked game. Despite his skills, they're screwing Manny over, and he intends to prove it. Apparently, the man left in charge of guarding the door is a spy, and he wants Manny to join their cause. Salvador, or Sal, is a member of the Lost Souls Alliance, or LSA. He used to be a Reaper like Manny, but he discovered a web of lies and corruption deep within the DoD. Someone is robbing innocent souls of their rightful form of transport into eternal rest. Sal claims that Manny won't be able to get out of the city without his help, especially now that people with power are looking for him. He offers a position of power in the LSA whenever he wants it. Manny accepts, being asked to get carrier pigeon eggs for Sal to raise from birth, as well as a mold of Manny's teeth for Ava, who's also a spy, to allow her to access the system. The DoD scans teeth since they can't really scan non-existent skeleton eyes. Manny climbs the building once more, breaking into Domino's office this time and ransacking it for a mouthguard and a piece of coral. He goes back to the rope from earlier, grabbing the other end and attaching the coral to use as a pseudo-grappling hook. This is another thing that I solved on accident by clicking too far to the right and accidentally picking up the other part of the rope. Manny throws it to the ladder, climbing to the roof and entering a standoff with the pigeons. He tries to scare them off with his balloon replica of Robert Frost, but they remain unfazed. Instead, he crumbles some bread into a pile alongside another balloon. The birds eat the bread and accidentally pop the balloon in the process, scaring the rest of their flock away. Manny grabs the eggs and moves into the garage. There's a machine here that dispenses auto body filler, which Manny fills his mouthguard with. He takes a big bite into the goo, creating a mold that can be used to fool scanners. With both requirements fulfilled, Manny returns to the secret base of the LSA. Sal leads Manny through a secret tunnel, informing him that he'll need to go to Rubacava to find Mercedes. Apparently, everyone who wants to get to the 9th Underworld for eternal rest must cross the Sea of Lament, and Rubacava is where the ships leave. Manny absolutely needs to get there before Mercedes does, and he's willing to wait as long as it takes. Sal asks Manny if he has a little bit of a crush on this client, but Manny flatly denies it. Sal and Manny finally reach a location called the Petrified Forest. Sal heads back and Manny moves forth, stumbling upon Glottis. Glottis is crying because he was fired, and in a fit of emotion, he literally rips his own heart from his chest and tosses it behind him into a spider's web. Manny retrieves it and shoves it back into his friend's chest. We cut to another confrontation back in the DOD. Mr. Lamont, I assure you the missing woman will be found. I will personally track her down myself. Just like you personally picked her up from the land of the living. That was my intention, but Agent Calavera somehow got to her first. We gave you the fastest car, Domino. We gave you all the best clients. You had all the advantages, so how was this Calavera able to sneak in there and eat your lunch? Oh, now Hector, you can't get too mad at Domino. That wasn't his fault. Oh, I can, Don. You should know I can get too mad, but not at Domino. After all, he wasn't in charge of this operation. At least, not until now. Hector, no. Bang, bang, bang. Guy bleeding, but he's a skeleton. Sprouting plants. Marbles. Funny. For some reason, I was expecting tulips. Well, maybe Mr. Calavera, Domino. Why don't you personally go down to the basement and escort him up here? The sooner he's sprouted and we can get back to business, the better. Using the modified car, Manny and Glottis immediately crash before driving off to a tree farm where marrow is extracted. So what if we move it to... What?
What?
Uh-oh.
What?
What's happening?
Yeah, it's just like Spelunky where you spent too long in the petrification forest. You know how I made a joke about the game crashing?
Please, I have not saved in a little bit. That'd be very unfortunate.
I also get why this game goes in years for chapters now, because by God, this is taking a long time.
So it turns out this is a fairly common glitch. There doesn't seem to be an explanation for it, but it's been around for at least the past 7 years without being patched out. It's well known enough to have forums online discussing it, so you'd think they would get on patching that, but they never did. Just another thing about this port that's really lacking. After replaying 40 minutes worth of content in 6 minutes, somehow, Manny convinces Glottis to climb up the contraption on the tree to try and change the balance of the weights so the machine will break and they can loot it for parts. When Glottis' efforts failed to provide results, Manny turned the machine back on and uses some of the tubes as well as Glottis' additional weight to get the job done. With a newly upgraded suspension, they move up a rocky path, but they find themselves blocked by demon beavers. Yes, those are flaming beavers that chase you. Manny gets rid of them using his fire extinguisher, but they don't have space to get the car to the newly unguarded bridge. The way to unlock another path here is absolutely insane. Manny has to go back to where Glottis ripped out his own heart and pick up this massive sign. He then has to walk it back to this corner full of cave openings. These are a complete red herring that have no use. If you go in one of them, you'll come out a random other one. That's it. To solve the puzzle, you need to take the sign and place it in the center of the area. You then need to move it bit by bit, following the direction that the sign rotates in until it stops moving, revealing a hidden passageway with a key inside. This key then can finally open up the gate that allows the car to pass through and over the bridge. Manny and Glottis arrive in Rubacava. Manny heads to a nearby restaurant where he runs into the old client from earlier working there and waiting for his wife. He hands Manny a photo of her and both agree to look for the other's person of interest. Manny walks to the right where a camera angle conveniently covers up the existence of a massive cliff. Bye-bye, skelly boy. He's dragged back to shore by a sailor who hits it off with Glottis immediately. Manny has to interrupt their conversation to ask the man about the missing wife, and he receives some unfortunate news. That client's wife left 2 weeks ago on a boat with another man. Manny promptly delivers this information as well as proof of it through a boat log, prompting the client to leave in pursuit of her. He demands Manny take over his job as janitor here in the meantime. Since Manny still has to wait for Mercedes, he gets to work. An entire year passes, revealing that Manny has somehow turned the small restaurant into a successful casino that he is now the boss of. One of his workers tells him that a customer of interest has requested his presence. That is where year one ends. So my thoughts are all over the board regarding this game. It is super charming, the characters are great, the art direction is incredible, the voice acting is wonderful, and it's just overall a fun experience when you know what you're doing. Plus, the story is really interesting so far. But when it comes to the technical difficulties and some of the puzzle logic, it really falls short. There were so many glitches and problems that I encountered that I just don't know what to do half the time. I both want to love it and want to hate it. The most frustrating thing for me was the failure to record anything, even though it is set up correctly. My recording software will record any other game, just not Grim Fandango, specifically because I record things in different channels so that I can adjust the individual volume of different aspects afterwards. It really hurt this video by limiting the amount of cutscenes that I could show, and it prevented me from showing off the great voice acting. But that's not going to stop me from trying to beat the rest of this game in future videos. Make sure to check out the long play on my second channel to witness some of the shenanigans that I couldn't fit in here. There are some large gaps of silence because the audio didn't record, but for the next chapters I'm going to try and fix that to the best of my ability, even if it means somebody else recording the cutscenes from their end. I hope to see you all again. Have a great rest of your day.